Hello and welcome to another edition of The Rest is Entertainment with me, Marina Hyde.
And me, Richard Osman. Hi, Marina.
Hello, Richard. How are you?
I'm all right. You spent most of last week in the post office inquiry with a front row seat. How was that?
It was extraordinary, really. And actually, I was sitting and I met the people who, the producers of Mr. Bates versus the post office. And I was talking to other journalists, who've covered it for so long, much far longer than me. And it was extraordinary. But you're sitting there in a room with hundreds of the victims, and you just, people have become sort of strange celebrities. Like Alan Bates comes in and there's a sort of buzz, which is not as it should be, because it should never have had to happen. But it was a sort of extraordinary to be in the room with Paula Venables, who has, been like Kaiser Sose for the last 10 years. You haven't seen her, and she hasn't uttered a word on any of this. So it was an amazing thing. There was a slight dampener put on it by the suggestion that I would have to have it immediately go into a general election campaign, but I'm now heavily sedated and can talk freely about that, which we will a bit on this show.
Yeah, I wasn't aware about the general election campaign. Then I was listening to The Rest is Politics. I heard about it.
Breaking.
Sounds interesting. And it's the Labour v Conservative, right?
Yeah,
okay.
Those two teams will be playing each other.
And the Conservatives, that's the same as Tories.
Yeah, that's the same as Tories.
Okay.
We're going to talk a little bit about what happens when a politician has to go on a chat show, a talk show, some non-traditional news programme. That's one of the things we're going to talk about this week.
We're going to talk about that. We are going to talk about Scarlett Johansson having her voice stolen, allegedly, for the new AI chatbot from OpenAI, and what that means and what OpenAI chatbots are going to be, and is it the death of Siri and Alexa?
And we are also going to talk about property shows on TV. There's a new show that's sort of based on Selling Sunset, which is obviously set in the LA property market, which is called Buying London, also on Netflix. And we're going to talk about that horror show.
Yeah, The Guardian called it the most hateable programme in TV history.
They're using that as their advertising, actually. They've literally clipped it and using it as advertising.
Should we start with politics, but politics in a fun way, i.e. politics/entertainment?
Yeah, when they have to go onto the fun program, or I don't know if they're fun programs, but I think that the clue was there when Rishi Sunak went on Loose Women not so long ago. That was the clue, really. And candidates now, the whole talk show strategy, by the way, is relatively recent. I'm going to shock you. We'll do a little bit of a history first. Would you believe it started in the United States of America? And in 1992, Bill Clinton was actually third to Ross Perot in June of the year of that election. And he was really in the doldrums, and they decided to send him on Arsenio Hall's kind of late night show, which, by the way, was not one of the big sort of like the Tonight Shows, whatever. Nixon and Kennedy had been on the Tonight Show occasionally, but that was it. And he opens the show in Wayfarers, playing the saxophone, plays Heartbreak Hotel. The crowd go absolutely nuts for it. Clinton, you were dealing with quite a useful proposition because he was obviously very good he had a sort of easy charm, maybe too easy, which is part of the reason his campaign was in the doldrums. Yeah. Anyway, I don't think we call it that anymore, actually, easy charm. I think sexual politics has advanced a bit. We don't call it easy charm. But anyway, what they realised at that point was that kind of soft exposure can be as helpful, if not more helpful, than hard news exposure, particularly now when mainstream news has been abandoned by so many people. Entertainment TV has in some ways become more important. And that's for one major reason in elections, which is that general elections are the time when people who do not care about the news or politics... Yep. They don't really watch the news. Those people want to know what you are like, the politicians, and they don't want to necessarily find that out on a news programme. So 1992 is probably regarded as the start of that kind of key campaign interview. And there is a bloodline from that to think like Tony Blair doing Little Ant and Little Dec. Yeah. When they actually gave Cherie Blair some Union Jack knickers. Again, I'm not sure we do that any longer, but politicians have been on Deal or...
You can't show the flag on telly anymore.
But they've been on, obviously, they've gone on things like WWE Raw, they've been on Deal or No Deal, all sorts of things like that. And you will see it in the coming weeks. And it's the thing that they really find quite scary to do. I think when you go on the Loose Women, you basically have to say, if you're a man and you go on Loose Women, you just have to say, this is my scariest interview.
Because I think there's a bit of politicians who think that the One Show or Loose Women is the easiest interview they're going to have. And I think it's very much different. I think it's very much the hardest interview they're going to have because they don't understand the rules.
Yeah, I think they know that. I think they think that this could be my biggest bear trap. They just, as you say, it's complete. They feel like amateurs in it. They're such professional politicians on everything else, but they feel like complete amateurs in these studios on these sofas or whatever. And they think this could be the point where I lose the election because I say one weird thing, but I don't want to be boring, so I have to say some slightly weird things, or else what's the point? I mean, when Sunak went on it, actually, Janet Street Porter said to him, why does your party hate pensioners? It's like,
Yeah.
well, that's a bit of a curve. I mean, that's like the one people we don't hate. So they're going to ask you some.
Do you know what? And that's the problem. Is you know, he should have just replied that.
Yeah.
If he'd replied, pensioners, the only people we like. We hate everyone else.
But then you've
And
told
then-
Janet Street Porter on Loose Women that she's wrong, and they really hate that. So
Oh,
you
they
can't
don't
do
like
that.
Yeah.
I think it did actually look that he was thinking, are you actually joking? But anyway, so preparing them for these shows is quite a tricky business. Because do you remember Theresa May on the One Show? Theresa
Yeah.
and her husband did the One Show. And they talked about like girl jobs and boy jobs, and he did the bins, and I can't remember if she did the cooking.
Yeah.
And you have to sort of pretend, what you have to say is, I'm a normal person exactly like you. And to which the obvious answer is, but you're literally the Prime Minister, or you
Yeah.
want to be, and you're not. Preparing them for these interviews can be quite extraordinary. And I talked to Theo Bertram about this. Now, Theo used to work at Number 10 as an advisor to Blair and Brown.
Number 10 Downing Street.
Number 10 Downing
Wow.
Street. Later he worked at TikTok, and he is now director of, no, exactly, of the Social Market Foundation, which is a leading cross-party think tank. And obviously the first thing he said is like, I'd so much rather talk about policy. But the reality is that elections are when people who are not interested in those sort of things are watching.
It's like elections are for politics what Wimbledon is for tennis.
Yeah.
Which is literally 85% of the population doesn't care at all about politics. And I've said before, it's not because they're idiots or anything. It's just it's not the thing that rings their bell. You know, they care about what they get paid. They care about, is their neighbourhood safe? They care about their family. They're not interested in the noise of politics. It doesn't interest them in the same way that most people are not interested in tennis until suddenly Sue Barker pops up and you think, now I'm interested in tennis. And that's where we are now with politics.
Yes. Question Time used to do a funny question at the end. Now, this was the thing that the minister would spend like 90% of the time obsessing on, wanted to do it. He said that he remembered doing a long debate with preparing David Miliband in his massive room when he was Foreign Secretary for one of these interviews. And they were like wargaming all the different questions. You know, what if I'm asked for my dream date? And he said, I should say my wife. No, that's too boring. What about Kelly Brook? And a long pause. Sorry, who is Kelly Brook?
Wow. Okay. Hold on. Say Kelly Brook and my wife. No, actually, don't say that. Yeah. It's a hard, if you're a politician, it's a hard question to answer because you can't say, do you know what? The British people.
Yeah.
I think.
That's my date.
Yeah.
Please go out with me on July the 4th. All politicians on these things are completely terrified of saying anything interesting about themselves, but also they're really scared of being boring. They don't want to be boring.
Yeah.
So they have to try and thread that needle and like maybe not bring their family too much into it because understandably they want to keep it out. So it's very, very difficult. Someone like Boris Johnson, who was a natural performer in those things, but was a very, very, very bad prime minister in many people's view.
Everyone I know who would be good on the One Show would be a bad prime minister. I cannot think of any crossover of someone. I don't think you can do both. You have to choose.
Yes, absolutely. And I think we should do a separate thing talking to Theo about I hope he will talk about TV debates.
Debates, we must talk about that.
Because that is, I think that is in our remit, isn't it? Because it will be, it's primetime TV, Richard. Those are very, very hard to prepare people. And they are so different to doing the talk shows, doing the debates. You've got to be so many different types of, not celebrity, but sort of so many. It is like being a bit of a different type of celebrity for each of those different formats in an election campaign.
Yeah, I think it's interesting because normally if you go on something like the One Show, there's something interesting about you or something interesting you're about to do, and it's very rare that someone who is boring, genuinely uncharismatic, gets to be on a show like that. You'll see it on TV quiz shows. The TV quiz shows are cast because you have to have people who've got something about them. And if occasionally people slip through the net, you go, oh, that's what it's like. It's like sort of dead. There's something about camera that it kills people. And, so if you're an author or a film star or something like that, and you're used, you go on those shows and you've got something to talk about. But it's very rare that someone like Rishi Sunak, say, who I don't think is a natural television performer. Okay.
No.
I don't, he's not going to go on the wheel.
Well, Starmer isn't either.
Exactly.
But in real life, they are much, much more personable and people like them. They're always surprised when they meet them.
Exactly that, because the TV camera does something to people. It adds £10 and takes an awful lot off your charisma. But it's very rare that you'd have someone that the One Show would go, we are going to book someone who we know to be boring. We do have to book Rishi Sunak. We sort of have to do it. And also, the One Show doesn't really want to do a gotcha on Rishi Sunak, right?
No.
The One Show sort of wants to show who he is. I think the issue that these politicians have, they've grown up in an environment where every single show they go on is pretty much the same.
Yeah.
And also goes out to pretty much the same audience. And there's two problems, I think, with mainstream political interviews. Firstly, this obsession, which I absolutely understand, about getting that gotcha moment. I was at West Streeting was on one of the Sunday morning things the other day, and there's about 3 minutes of they were trying to get him on a very specific point about what they're going to do with the NHS.
You can't remember the pledge
NHS
card
contracts.
or something.
And it's something,
Yeah.
but for like a really long time. I mean, I get what you're doing, and I get in the meeting beforehand you said, "I tell you what, he won't be able to answer." But this is the problem. They say, "I tell you what, he won't be able to answer is this," right? But also, they know he won't be able to answer it because all sorts of competing issues he has with his party and with know the voters and stuff. So they know he can't answer it. He knows they know that. And so suddenly you've got this ridiculous dance of something where it's not a real interview. They know the line of attack. He knows his line of defense. And everyone who's watching has made their mind up already anyway. And that is so much of political broadcasting over the last 20 or 30 years. It's a dance that everyone knows the moves to.
Yeah.
And that everyone, it's like the arms race. We both got nuclear weapons, and so no one's going to do anything. And it's going to take a very brave politician to be the first person to go, maybe I could do this differently.
Yeah.
Maybe if I was on a show where I had the opportunity to be me and tell the truth and, be honest about things, I could do it.
Well, that's why we like the weird ones, because everyone will tune into those, even because it's a fish out of water format, which we all enjoy. And I have to say that I do think the people, when they're doing the One Show interviews or Loose Women or whatever, they are also going for a newsline. But their newslines are just so qualitatively different.
Yeah.
They want to talk about, like, that Theresa May doesn't put the bins out or something like that.
Yeah.
They want those kind of domestic things that I think you can tell so much more about from the domestic things anyway. But it's quite hard when you are actually the Prime Minister to say, well, yeah, I don't do that much stuff because, I don't know if you noticed, I've just been failing to get a Brexit deal for about 4 years.
The thing that really, really, really works in show business is authenticity, or at least pretend, the pretense of authenticity. So actually, if you say the bins, oh, I don't do the bins. Oh my God, I couldn't think of anything worse. Then at least people go, oh, okay, well, at least that's something. And if you are, if you go on a show and there's a question you don't know answer, it's very easy if you're from the world of entertainment, because you start telling an anecdote about something else, or you kind of veer off into a fun direction, or you point about something that just happened with one of the other people, because that's the world you are used to. You're used to very fast back and forth with people. You're allowed to say anything. Nothing really comes back on you. But those politicians, they have no freedom to do or say anything. They've got their lines, they've got their party lines, and that doesn't work if you're going up against Judy Love and Janet Street Porter. It's just not. It's not the thing. It's not the rhythm of the conversation that you need to have.
It is doable if you're really skilled. In that Arsenio Hall appearance, which I actually went back and watched the whole thing, it's really interesting. So whilst Clinton managed to take the piss out of himself, and that line that he'd been in, people had really hated him for saying, I smoked once but I didn't inhale, he was able to say, yeah, by the way, it's because I'd never smoked a cigarette, so I didn't know how to inhale. It's not that I didn't want to inhale.
Right.
And it's sort of funny, and it was disarming. But he also gets asked, about tax, and then he does a sort of 4-minute monologue on the relationship between the tax take and public services. So Clinton is really good at that sort of stuff. And obviously Blair was very good at it as well. It's harder when you're Theresa May, who is a more, can I say, more limited as a media performer. And I mean, Starmer...
There's no shame in that.
Yeah,
by
no,
the way.
there's nothing wrong with it. It doesn't necessarily mean you're a bad politician, although in my view she wasn't great.
I love going on Loose Women. Right, Loose Women is great because they will literally talk about anything, and I like to talk. You can talk about anything. You can take anything in any direction. They ask you questions. You think, right, okay, I've never been asked that on a television show before, because they do that show every day, and there's a load of them. And so it's
Rishi Sunak's never been asked why he hates pensioners before. Let me tell you that for free. God.
You see, and when they ask me that, I have a very good answer prepared, always. I say because some of them can't solve crime. For me, it'd be very natural to go on Loose Women or Sunday Brunch. It'd be very.
Oh, you would love it.
I'm in heaven. But going on Sunday Brunch, I think, was slightly smarter with Keir, because they are not. Simon and Tim are not going to ask you why you hate pensioners.
No.
Right? They are going to ask you a question about football. They are going to let you cook some tandoori salmon, and you just look like who you are as a human being. That's an easier gig. If I was in charge of media strategy for Keir Starmer, there's a number of shows I would send him on, but Boris Johnson was an amazing media performer. You could trust Boris Johnson on Loose Women. And that's a sentence, by the way, it's never been said before.
Sorry, there's so much to unpack
Yes.
there.
But you could put him on Loose Women and he'll be fine. He knows. He's also got a thing of understanding.
He's a great lover of women, as
Yes.
people always have said. No, but he is better in interviews with women, for definite.
And he's also better in an interview where he can go off at tangents and where he doesn't have to stick to the point. And he instinctively understands a format that says, I do not have to answer the question you just asked me. It is more fun if I do not answer that question. I don't remember the last time we got a political interview that genuinely moved the needle at all, that changed our perspectives on human beings at all. And I do think, it starts with the Paxman thing of why is this lying bastard lying to me? Which is, of course, 100% you've got to hold people's feet to the flame, and that's what you've got to do, and you've got to expose hypocrisy and what have you. However, you also have to do other stuff, and they concentrate so much on that, on trying to find a bit of hypocrisy, which is very, very easy when they know the stakeholders who are behind these politicians. They know there are certain questions that cannot be answered without someone sounding awful. And so they just ask them. And the politicians know they're going to do it. And so we get this political system where there's sort of no point to listen to an interview anymore. If it's up to me, never have any politicians on a political show. Have people behind the scenes, have professors, have all sorts of people from different walks of life, but who do not have skin in the game and are not having to report back to central office, and who are not having to, whose job doesn't rely on them giving a particular answer in a particular way or not giving out a particular piece of information. We learn nothing as a democracy from these shows anymore, I think. And it's hard to see anyone on either of the front benches who would have the ability to come in and sprinkle a bit of stardust and be able to make that change, because it's going to come through personality.
Yes,
is the truth, and someone who really wants to explain why it is things are done. Someone like Andy Burnham, who now has less of that national pressure on him because of the job he does, is
because
able.
He wasn't like that before. My goodness, when he was in the cabinet, no way.
Exactly, and it's funny how every single time a politician breaks out of the straitjacket of what the party wants them to say, they become more and more and more popular. At some point, you've got to take that
risk and become that person. Yeah.
If you're doing a book or you're doing a film or anything like that, there's a sort of hierarchy. There's a certain amount of shows that you go on that move the needle. I suspect it's the same for politicians. But if you go on the Graham Norton show, for example, it's huge. Yeah. Always huge. Can't quite see either of them on that. Maybe Keir could do it.
He might be able to do it, but it'd be interesting to see which ones they do.
It's a tricky one. The one show really shifts the
one
needle.
shows, they'll both do the one show.
Because people watch it and love it. If I was a politician, I would, for the last 2 years, if I was Keir Starmer, I'd have been doing films for the one show about stuff I cared about.
Yes.
I'd say, do you know what? Can I go up and film this thing about something in the past which I really cared about, or something where people gather together? I would have done that for the last 2 years. That would have been my media strategy.
Yes, it's too late now, but yes.
This morning, absolutely shifts the diet as well. But local news is always talk about is the biggest one. If I was, if any of those politicians, you'll get a bigger grilling on those shows, but also more fairness. It's the perfect combination for me. But so if I was advising Rishi and Keir, it's hard because I don't think either of them are particularly comfortable in that arena. But if you had a politician who was, then the world is your oyster in terms of the media. You can be absolutely all over it. You can be in people's houses. You can be absolutely explaining who you are. And that, I think, we need a kind of Boris Johnson, but who actually cares about running the country.
I much prefer that sort of thing when they're in the studio and they have to go to the studio and they have to do it as you would do on the sofa, like you were, I don't know, you promoting one of your books. Yeah. I prefer that. I don't like the little films that they do when they're like, this is me living, this is how I live. Here I am going to the football with my friends on the Saturday.
No, but you don't
I'm not interested in those.
We've got such a lot of it coming in the next 6 weeks.
Yeah, we've got a lot. Well, if anyone does well or eye-catchingly badly, we will check back in on how and why they did so.
And at another point, we'll talk about the debates. So,
definitely, we'll talk about, which is a totally different kettle of fish to this.
Oh my God, really is.
We must move on to Scarlett Johansson and OpenAI. Now, what has happened is that OpenAI, who are the firm who have ChatGPT, and the CEO is called Sam Altman, they launched a new AI assistant, which is voiced with a female voice. Now, that female's voice sounds exactly like Scarlett Johansson. And
which fair enough, you would think.
Yes,
that's okay.
Absolutely, she's got a lovely voice. Ahead of this launch, Sam Altman tweeted simply the word "her." Now, Her is a Spike Jonze movie in which Scarlett Johansson plays the voice of an AI assistant, and Joaquin Phoenix falls in love with her. And it's well, anyway, we'll come to all the movies that Sam Altman doesn't understand the point of in a minute. But this voice was suddenly removed, and pretty shortly after that, Scarlett Johansson issued an extraordinary statement in which she said that Sam Altman had approached her last September to be the voice of this thing. And I'm going to go to her statement. She said, he felt by voicing the system, I could bridge the gap between tech companies and creatives and help consumers to feel comfortable with the seismic shift concerning humans and AI. He said that my voice would be comforting to people. Oh, man. Okay. Now, I should say that, yes, Her is his favourite film.
Yeah, it's not a great advert for falling in love with a AI assistant.
Or indeed the whole idea of AI assistants.
If you were to watch it, you would say the one thing I'm going to make sure I don't do in future is invent an AI assistant like that. And if I do, I'm definitely not going to get Scarlett Johansson to voice it. But Sam Altman has done the opposite.
This product comes out, and she says then, when I heard the release demo, I was shocked, angered, and in disbelief that Mr. Altman would pursue a voice that sounded so eerily similar to mine that my closest friends and news outlets could not tell the difference. Now, Sam Altman says that it's actually another voice actress who's voiced this, but he can't say who it is for privacy concerns. But obviously the feeling is that he's just fed a load of Scarlett Johansson stuff to his machine. The fact that he treated her, I mean, these people are not the brightest. I know they've got the future of the entire of humanity in their hands.
Yeah.
Obviously this feeds into Hollywood's paranoia about AI, that it will come and take their jobs, but also us normies' paranoia that it will take everybody's jobs. And that there's something so creepy about this, that this woman said no.
Yeah.
And then they just did it anyway.
And also that he's taken a film which is fairly dystopian and certainly not a good advert for personal assistants and gone, listen, he likes the film, he's got a crush on Scarlett Johansson, and he's a billionaire. So he's kind of going, great. And he's had meetings with Scarlett Johansson and said, could we use your voice? She said no. And he hasn't heard no for a long time.
He hasn't heard no, but he's also, one of the things about films and him is so weird. He said that he really liked The Social Network because he thought it might encourage people to do startups. He thought that Oppenheimer was problematic because it wasn't encouraging enough people to become physicists.
He liked Jaws. He hoped it might encourage people to swim.
And they're regarded as these kind of philosopher kings. James Marriott, who writes brilliant columns in The Times that I absolutely love, was talking about this the other day, saying that all these people, you have to listen to all these people now, like they've got these amazing philosophies. Like Elon Musk will go on shows and say, let me tell you something about the Romans. They were incredible innovators. I'm like, sorry, what? This is like the Ladybird Guide to Stupidity. Everything is like it's come out of the sort of business section of the airport bookshop. And actually they're these weird, creepy, often very stunted men. The Social Network's really interesting because it shows how Facebook was born out of this kind of weird night of terrible misogyny. And Sam Altman, how is your favourite movie, Her?
Yeah.
Everything about you is, he just doesn't understand movies. Meta's first chatbot really quickly started to say that Zuckerberg was creepy and manipulative.
No, really?
Like the machines, out of the mouths of the machines, really quickly. It would be interesting to see what Scarlett Johansson does with this, because she has got an appetite. She has shown herself to have an appetite for these kind of legal battles in the past. When Disney bought Black Widow out, the character is quite sexist, and particularly in a lot of the early Avengers. And you have to go through all of that. But eventually you're going to get your one movie that's your dedicated movie, and you get your big payday. And they put her movie in streaming and in theatres on the same day. Okay. So they kind of completely kneecapped her box office and did her over on that. And she sued Disney, which is quite punchy. Yeah, it was not when it was when Bob Chapek was the CEO, but she sued them. And the reason they did that, by the way, is obviously to build up the subscribers, and in that fear that they were being left behind on streaming. So it's using people's work. So this is a sort of similar, again, it's a kind of tech argument. We were talking about this the other day on the questions edition of the show.
Yes, questions and answers.
Yeah, which, in our law, we call it the tort of passing off, when you can you just get someone who sounds like Stephen Fry to do an advert. I think that in America it's different. They call it the right to publicity. But she would have quite a good claim here. I very much doubt that whoever made, I think it was Annapurna made Her, but whichever film production company made Her, I doubt they've licensed it to OpenAI. And
no one's really licensed anything to OpenAI.
No one's licensed anything. And they say, we've trained all our models on freely available stuff. It's like, well, I mean, how do we know? And people are saying, oh, well, in discovery, we would be in any potential court case, we'd be able to find out whether if there is an actress who's been told that she has to stand like Scarlett Johansson, that's one thing. But if they've trained the machine using her, you'd have to have whistleblowers. It's really impossible to say. So I don't know what she will do about it, but she does. She has, as we say, she has had an appetite for these kind of fights that might have a trickle down to other people in the business. And clearly, Hollywood is super paranoid
Yeah.
about the idea of being replaced by machines.
Hollywood and Hollywoodaby.
Yeah.
Genuinely, there's something super creepy behind it. But there's a great documentary we're watching at the moment about the oil companies in the 70s and how they did all their own climate change research. They did amazing departments, and the departments were saying to them, "Oh, this is definitely leading to climate change. Just so you know, we've got all of these numbers." And then the oil companies just kind of going, "Well, yeah, we really like selling oil. I mean, honestly, we make a lot of money from selling oil." So they absolutely shut them down, and they started having, PR companies saying, "Well, we're uncertain." And it looks like it's exactly the same in these big new AI companies, a lot of who set up saying, actually, we are on the side of good, and we've got groups of people who are doing research into how we can keep this under control and how we can make sure it doesn't, fall into the hands of bad actors. But that doesn't seem to be how it's playing out.
And also they don't know. Look what happened with Facebook, where all these people said, we basically invented this machine and we obviously had no possible idea that it would be responsible for swinging elections or they don't know any of these things until it's too late to know.
They're unbelievably good at coding.
Yeah.
Which, by the way, I'm not.
No.
So that's a real skill.
I mean, no offense, but they're not philosophers, and they're often very, very emotionally stunted, and they don't know. And the idea that we're allowing the future to be at least partially in the hands of this guy when he will do things like this. These are the warning signs. These are the red flags. And it may just be like, oh, it's just Scarlett Johansson's voice. But it's not. It's a real warning sign as to the much wider issues in this level of power and just the unknowns of it all. And also, I mean, you do sort of slightly feel, well, I wonder if this would have happened to a man. I don't know. But a woman, of course, this woman said no. And he just thought, well, I'll have it anyway.
I want to talk a little bit about Alexa and Siri, which are on their way out, really, because they seemed unbelievably futuristic. But actually, you realise now how unsophisticated they are. And actually, they're just a huge database of things which has to be typed in by somebody and then is regurgitated to you. So actually, this new generation of chatbot assistants, it is going to be incredible. I mean, I think of all the things that AI is going to do, this is going to be one of the useful ones that you will have an incredible, if you ring up, because you're something about your gas bill and you're put on hold to a robot and you're there for ages. Well, you won't have to do that from 2 years' time because your computer will do it. So your robot will talk to their robot. It'll all get sorted out. And, so that's a good thing, I think. Because I think Siri and Alexa, which they thought were going to be huge money spinners for them and haven't been at all. They haven't been able to. They haven't been able to really monetize them. They say that almost all uses of Alexa and Siri are turning the lights on and off and playing music, and that's it. And saying, play "Rest is History," please. So these new ones will have much more of a personality. You can sort of have a relationship with Alexa in that you can ask her to do a fart noise and she'll do it. But with a chatbot that learns who you are and learns everything about you and learns the things you like and you don't like and learns the things that you laugh at or don't laugh at, then it is going to be a very, very personal relationship, but a very, very useful relationship as well.
In some things, yes, but in terms of human relationships, we simply don't. It's completely distorting, and we don't know the story of social media and the things that have happened over the past few years. Couldn't be more salutary in terms of maybe this won't be a utopia. We must know this, and even these small things. What Sam Altman's done, this is a small thing. There's something interesting about the fact that sort of an old-fashioned movie star, a real human that lots of people have a crush on, admire, think is amazing, has just come out and said this. I think it's actually quite a sort of moment because he could barely do any wrong because people are all saying, oh, it's so interesting. And, obviously I understand that, AI and diagnostics and all sorts of other things are going to be very useful. The human relation side of things, which is clearly what happened with social media, cannot be an afterthought because we've already seen how utterly corrosive it is, particularly to children, to all sorts of things. Yeah. It's not that she's fighting back against the fact that she could have been paid for this. She didn't want to be paid for it. She didn't want to be the voice.
She thought it was weird.
Kind of made a movie in which she says this stuff is really bad.
Yeah.
And he just did it anyway. And I think that it's such a sort of, in a way, it's such a simple story to understand.
It's interesting. It's sort of an adjunct, that Scarlett Johansson thing, to the Apple advert recently that they took off, where they were crushing musical instruments and crushing kind of paints and stuff like that to, and put everything in an
now all in an iPad.
And again, that's a very, very visual representation of people going, oh, hold on, yes, because it's like being
it's all that shit stuff.
Yeah, it's like being a frog in a pan, and the heat is just gradually rising.
Yeah.
It takes a while occasionally to go, oh no, you are okay. You actually do want to get rid of all of this stuff, and you do want to steal Scarlett Johansson's voice.
But there's a sociopathy to the fact that neither of those people could see that they would, that's really bad for Microsoft. That was a real PR, more than an own goal. And this is more than an own goal for Sam Altman. This is really quite bad. And it's crystallized so much of what people think. So I think that those are quite interesting, but it's the sociopathy that makes them not see.
Yeah.
How could you have done this? How could you think this is a good advert? How could you think that?
And also, once you're a billionaire tech bro, it's like sort of being a child king in the kind of 15th century. Nobody is saying no.
No.
Nobody is going to say no, because you want to be around the court. Because someone who's a multi-billionaire, money does rain out of their pockets, around them. And so they're suddenly surrounded by people who are going, yep, like while stuffing pound notes into their pockets. Ingrid, my wife, got down to the last 3 to be the voice of Siri. Many years ago. Yeah, it was a huge thing. Like they auditioned everyone, and she was out in LA, and she got down to the final 3, and they were going to go to Poland, and she would have had to sort of say words for kind of the next 4 months. But she's got down to the last 3.
Incredible.
So she was so nearly the voice of Siri, which would have been so weird at home. Don't you think you'd never know if she was in?
So would she have just had to say all the words?
Yeah, pretty much. That was the gig. They were going to fly her to Poland, and just for months upon months, say the name of every film ever made, every word in different intonations, and
Wow. You would be driven nuts.
You would be driven nuts. Yeah, I think it was well paid.
Yeah,
I think. She certainly said, I was gutted not to get it.
What price not being nuts, though?
Yeah, exactly. And also, what price not being Siri now?
Yeah.
It's not. I think on reflection, she's happy she didn't do it. But at the time, like any actor, she's thinking, oh, that would have been a nice one.
Wow, lucky escape.
A bit more fun now. Should we talk about property shows?
Oh, please.
This is off the back of, there's a new property show just launched on Netflix called Buying London. And The Guardian described it as possibly the most hateable TV ever. And it's essentially, it's a Selling Sunset for London. So Selling Sunset was the sort of the grand pappy or grand mammy of these sort of big, elaborate, expensive property shows. And it's essentially showing people around very, very, very high-end, very expensive, super prime properties in London.
In the London one, they've had to explain at the start, by the way, you get absolutely no square footage for your money in London. So they've had to sort of essentially do an international disclaimer as to why the houses people are about to see are incredibly small and cost £1 bazillion.
Because in Selling Sunset, or you go up into the hills, you've got these incredible kind of 10,000 square feet houses overlooking the...
Dating all the way back to 1996.
Yes, exactly. Yeah. And here you're seeing a sort of a 2 up, 2 down in Mayfair. What I'm going to do at the end of this piece is reveal what I think the 3 greatest property shows of all time. But there are 2 very, very different types. There's the wonderful long-running British TV daytime and sometimes primetime stuff, The Homes Under the Hammer, Escape to the Country, Place in the Sun, Location, Location, Location. People love looking at property, right? But I think what the producers of Selling Sunset and these other shows worked out is very occasionally, when we're moving house, we look at properties that we can afford. And that's the only time in our life we ever look at properties we can afford, because the whole rest of the time, all we do is surf the net and look at properties we can't afford. Okay, that's the real fun of property. So you've got these amazing daytime shows we've got here. But Selling Sunset was the first big one of just showing these huge multi
they are vast. They've always sort of destroyed a special needs school to build on top of it. There's no... They are obscene, enormous. They're the size of football pitches.
There was an amazing thing I forgot to say when we were talking about the Sunday Times Rich List last week.
Yeah.
One of the guys, if you want the opposite of a Hollywood movie, it was this guy made all this money and said he knocked down the hospital in which he was born and built a golf course.
That's sort of what you're getting in Selling Sunset, where there's all these all reality TV really is people fighting over money or power or both. So it is sort of perfect for it. And you have these feuding glamazons really in Selling Sunset, but I think but they're properly brilliant monsters. These women, Christine and Chriselle, they're like the final form of girl boss feminism. The London one, if they've got a guy called Daniel Daggers. Let me see a birth certificate, please. And he's got an agency. Now, I think his glamazons, talking to someone in the business, shall we say, I think his glamazons have been brought in because I'm told that there are some people who actually do sell houses for this guy, and they're not necessarily the ones
I think
swinging
that's the
their
case.
hair on the television.
I mean, there was a lot of hair swinging.
There was so much hair swinging.
More than you normally get when you're being shown around a house.
Yeah. The other problem you've got is that people don't want, in the super prime space, they don't, there's no benefit to putting your house on the thing. You don't really, it's a bit sort of déclassé. You don't want to put your house on a Netflix show. It's not going to help you sell it at all because the lead-in time is so long. It's like 9 months. So it's either gone or it hasn't. I mean, I think Selling Sunset is hilarious and it's very watchable and whatever. There's something about that Ocean's Remove that helps. You think, this is what Americans are supposed to be like. Of course it's big. Of course it's enormous. Everyone's unapologetic. It's like, yes, of course I've got like 40-foot marble counter. Whereas if we see British people doing it, we slightly feel they should be they should apologise. Sorry, you should be apologising for being such an arsehole. And it should work in other ways because we are obsessed with class. And if ever, I don't know, Colleen Rooney puts some pictures of her house from Insta, just even in the background of Instagram, and the Mail will like collate them all in a story on Mail Online. All of the underneath comments will be like, well, you can't buy class, can you? Or something like that, even when it's just a very, very sort of neutral space, they want to say that. People want to say that. So really, this show on paper, I feel, should work because people are just saying, this is absolutely disgusting. I wouldn't live in it if you paid me, and these kind of horrendous architectural mishmashes.
What's the next one?
Yeah. But I didn't feel it did work like Selling Sunset. Well, what did you feel?
I'm not a fan of Selling Sunset. I love watching high-end property shows because for exactly that reason. I love looking at a $40 million house and going, oh, I'm so happy I don't want to live in that $40 million house.
Pay me to live in it.
Yeah,
absolutely disgusting.
Because you just saved $40 million. But you know that you just think this is amazing. I know it exists, but I don't want to live in it, and so I don't have to pay.
Are you like me? Do you like? But this is a separate type of show because I don't even think of it as that. I just think of it as a sort of absolutely bizarre confection where it's a complete MacGuffin. What Hitchcock called a MacGuffin, which is something just moves along the plot. I almost feel that the houses in that they move along the plot, but what you really want to do is watch them feuding over each other's weddings, over different deals. They're fighting over money and power, so I don't really care whether it's houses or not.
See, that's where I'm exactly the opposite because those bits I will fast forward through those bits. Because as a TV producer, I know they're fake, right? I know it's just nonsense. I mean, it's sort of fact.
But I like fixer-upper stuff. I really like fixer-upper shows.
I love fixer-upper shows. Buying London, the first episode, they've got some interesting houses in there. And again, they do have a thing. They have property developers who become part of the thing because they will always put their properties on show and what have you. You'll never see a buyer unless it's again an Instagrammer who wants to be on the TV. But
by the way, won't buy the house because they don't have anything like enough money to buy it.
No, of course they won't. But even on that show, there's this sort of awful thing. He's got a house in Radlett that he wants to get the instruction on, which is sort of very Hogwartsy. But
they had to have that Hogwartsy. They had to have that house because otherwise all the houses would have been incredibly small.
Yes,
even though they were costing for £40 million, so they had to have a house right out in Hertfordshire because only then can it look even vaguely like something that would be on Selling Sunset.
But so he's got his estate agents, and one of them is they sort of say at the beginning, but you're friends with him, you're friends with Daniel, aren't you? And she goes, yeah, I've worked with Daniel for a lot of time now. Yes, I'm a friend of his. And so the other two women are kind of just sort of, there's a bit of sort of ominous music, and then Daniel Daggers is going, oh, there's three of you. I've taken three of you to show this house, and I'm only going to give you one of you the instruction. I don't know who it's going to be. And the three of them go, oh, I'd really like to have this house. And they go, I think I'd really be really good at selling this house. And at the end, of course, they give it to the South African. And then, because they were at a big dinner at some posh house in Chelsea. And suddenly they're all looking daggers at this woman. You think, none of this is real.
No.
None of it. Honestly, I'd rather you show me the second and the third bedroom because you've skated around the house a little bit. And there's other stuff that I would like to see.
Can I just see the 16.5 bathrooms, please?
Yes, please. Could I see, what's the waste disposal system like? Because I haven't seen it.
Have they got a boot room?
Have they got a boot room? Exactly. So you're watching this, you just think, well, look, I know this is not true. This is absolutely nonsensical. It makes me feel like Daniel Daggers is not true.
But it was no. Yeah,
I know
God,
he is
if I
true.
don't believe in Daniel Daggers,
Daggers.
Richard, I don't know what I believe in.
I don't believe in
If you
anything.
tell me that,
It's like Father Christmas to me, Daniel Daggers.
but I don't like them all fighting beneath him.
Yeah.
I don't.
Yeah.
As I say, it is girl boss feminism, selling sunset. But you get that feeling that these women have it on their own terms in some kind of slightly warped way. But I didn't like that element of this show.
But just in terms of these property shows, which are here's a house, someone is going to buy it or not buy it if it's selling sunset. I want to do what I would say are my top three. Number 3, I will say $1 Million Listing, because of all the ones that are about, those sort of LA and stuff like that, that's the one where they've got more houses, and occasionally they'll do a nice kind of mid-century. And whenever they have like these beautiful kind of mid-century houses in the Hollywood Hills that you just think that just so full of history and just beautiful and with kind of fittings and stuff that you just think, oh my God, this is incredible. The people always just go in and go, well, we'll just gut this. We'll absolutely get rid of all of this because I can't, this just needs to be white and bright and it's like you think, oh my God, you're absolutely destroying Hollywood. But that's a fun one. I think of the daytime ones. See, Homes Under the Hammer is a really interesting one. I think they've done nearly they're like 1,600 episodes. They've done it a lot. Yeah. And it's the teams are working on it absolutely permanently because there's auctions and then they're going back in 6 months or a year's time. So that's a team who is working, I think, every day apart from Christmas. And over the years they've had 6 or 7 different presenters. They did an amazing thing where it used to be Martin Roberts and Lucy Alexander, and they decided they needed a third host and went for Dion Dublin. But the great thing about it is they went from just as a producer, this is what I'm always watching. You watch the beginning of Homes Under the Hammer. It used to be Martin and Lucy going, if you're thinking of getting a property bargain, why not go along to your local auction? And Lucy would go, that's what some of the people on today's show did. Let's take a look. Suddenly, if you've got 3 of these people, you've got to write a 3-hander for every single show. So Martin's got to go, lots of people in Britain love buying houses in auction. And Lucy's going, yes, we're going to see a few of them on this show. And then Dion's got to say, yeah, let's find out what happened. I'm like, come on, man, that's not extra information.
No.
So I love that as a producer, seeing that. Funny. And sometimes they'll go back to somewhere in 6 months, sometimes a year. So it's a very interesting, for people who are interested in production processes, it's a really interesting production process in that when you first film it, it's sort of meaningless. It's when you finally film it. And I was talking to the producer, a guy called Matt Masters, and he was saying that's the thing, you have to sort of keep in touch with the people doing up. Occasionally you have to go and see it because sometimes if they think it's finished, it's not really finished. And they have great relationships with the estate agents.
So the invisible hand of the production team will say, by the way, that looks crap, and that's
I don't think that's finished, but occasionally if they say, well, look, I'm selling it anyway, that you will go up and you'll do a piece saying it's not quite done. No. So you film, you sort of go around, then you film your finished item, and it's like a jigsaw puzzle. You're constantly piggybacking these things, which I find interesting from a TV producer's point of view, because I love the jigsaw puzzle of it. I think we've had every single presenter of Homes Under the Hammer on House of Games, because I'm such a fan of it. Whenever I see a name on a list, I go, oh yeah,
yes, please.
Martell can come on, yeah. Oh, Jackie Joseph can come on, yeah. And I spoke to one of them once. I said, what's the best house you ever saw? And they said, I've never seen a good house. I was like, come on. I mean, they were being funny, but I
hear that on the show. One
of the great things about Homes Under the Hammer is the music choices, and which is always, there's always got Rip It Up and Start Again by Orange Juice or Build by the House Martins. It was a 2-bed cottage in Maidstone. And this song started, I recognise that. And it was Made of Stone by the Stone Roses. And I thought, come on, that's pretty good.
That would be so fun. Yeah. I'd love to do a week doing that.
Well, people always say, oh, that must be the best job in Teddy, being the person who chooses music. You think, that is not a person's job. That is the editor and the producer. They're all kind of going, yeah, we could have a bit of fun. So it's literally an editor just at the end of their tether going, maybe I could do that. They have, I saw one on the other day where there was a woman talking about her daughter had loads of horses or something, so they needed a garden, and they played My Lovely Horse, the Father Ted Eurovision entry, straight after it. So I love that, and there's also just a shout out to the best edited clip ever on of daytime TV, which is Dan Mayer's one of Martin Roberts doing the imaginary piano. Have you seen that?
You were talking to me about this just a moment ago. Yes,
it's really, if you put Martin Roberts imaginary piano, and it's very, very, it's very, very funny. I think number 2. I have to choose between Escape to the Country, which I love,
Yeah.
and Homes Under the Hammer. I think I have to go for Homes Under the Hammer.
Yes.
But number one, a show we haven't mentioned yet, which I think combines all the good things of these shows, which is one where the properties are unbelievable. I mean, unbelievable. One that's not in Britain, so we don't feel guilty about watching it. And one where the soap opera is actually believable and incredibly charming. And there's a new series starting on Netflix this week, and it's The Parisian Agency.
Oh, yes. I've seen it. Yeah, this is very good.
God, it's so good. It's like three really hot French brothers, and their grandma and their mum and dad. These beautiful houses in Paris, and then they go down to the Côte d'Azur and what have you. But they're so lovely.
Yeah,
and I believe,
and they're also very French.
It is absolutely delightful. So Buying London starts on Netflix this week, but also Parisian Agency starts on Netflix this week. I think if you don't like Buying London, and I can see reasons why you wouldn't. By the way, I'm going to keep watching it.
Oh no, don't be.
Oh my God, yeah. And by the way, the Parisian Agency, which I adore, I think season 4 has just started, so there's lots to catch up on. Just halfway through season 3, they're going, oh, we have a British real estate agent coming out who's got lots of properties, and so we really have to impress this guy. And who is it? Danielle Daggers.
No.
Yeah, they could, like, for about 4 episodes, they keep going, oh, Danielle Daggers is coming out next week. We've got to impress Danielle Daggers. And Daniel, here he comes, Danielle Daggers. And so I knew the guy before Buying London. I'm like, yeah, I know Daniel Daggers. Yeah, I'm a Daniel Daggers guy already. But maybe there'll be a crossover. Maybe the Parisian. But those brothers on the Parisian show are such a delight.
Any recommendations this week? I have one.
Go on.
Because so many people have asked me about flops, and there is a book that I think is absolutely brilliant, and it's called Final Cut: Dreams and Disasters in the Making of Heaven's Gate, and it's by the executive at United Artists, who kind of effectively greenlights the film.
So that's the film we were talking
Heaven's
about.
Gate, which is almost the trope namer of mega flops.
Yeah.
And it comes at the end of that period of extraordinary innovation in Hollywood in the 1970s. And Michael Cimino, who is the maker of Heaven's Gate, and who's come off The Deer Hunter, which is a huge hit, and then how it all goes wrong with this film and it collapses the studio. And it's so interesting. Those questions we've talked about before when people say, but do you know if it's going wrong? This guy is the executive, and he's really unsparing of himself, and he writes it brilliantly. And it's a complete anatomy of how it happens, and you kind of can see how it did happen, because in retrospect, of course, we're all like, how the hell did you just keep giving this guy this money? That's Final Cut, and it's by Stephen Bach, Bach.
Amazing. And I will recommend Glow Up, which is on, I think it's BBC 3, but it's certainly on BBC iPlayer, and it's on about season 6, but it's the hunt for makeup artists. Yep. But, it's fascinating generation, fascinating creativity. It's a world that I know nothing about. And the people who come in, they'll have like guest judges that go, and the guest judges coming on is Sebastian, and they go, oh my God, they're absolutely crazy, because there's like a huge Instagram star to them. And I'm like, oh, I don't know who that is. And I love something, if it's a world that I don't know anything about, and you realize how big it is for people, and some of the stuff they do is absolutely unbelievable. So Glow Up, and it's the whole of this new series is on iPlayer now. And on that bombshell, see everyone on Thursday.
So please send your questions in. The rest is entertainment@gmail.com, and we will answer as many of them as we can, and see you.
And more top threes as well, because I know you hate a top 3, but I love a top 3.
No, I enjoyed being near the top 3. I was
asked,
top 3 adjacent.
We got asked last week, didn't we, about our top 3 cartoon mice? So we're going to have to do that on Thursday's show. So that's something to think about.
Yeah, we will go to the cartoon mice. All right then. Take care, everyone.
Bye.